All right, good morning, or scary morning. Scary morning to all. And we'll tell you why. Thank you for tuning in to the Ted Manila Information Show, also known as the TMI Show. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rawl in New York City. I'm over in the belly of the beast where all the decisions regarding our lives are being made. Ted, this is
Oh,
quite
are
scary.
are they? Are they? Or maybe they're being made here in New York by the Wall Streeters, the
Mm.
bankers who
Oh,
call
ooh.
their underlings down there in D.C.
Oh, that's a good point. Well, ultimately, though, the folks here in DC say yay or nay. Well, not yay or nay, but they sign off on it. The buck
That's
stops with
true.
them.
That's true.
So they do, but it is a
Officially, it's them. Yeah.
yes, officially on paper, it's the people here that I'm down the street from. So
hmm hmm
that's fun. So obviously, we talk about anything from news to politics, lifestyle, culture, fad diets, all that stuff, the taboo, anything and everything goes here because we believe you can never have too much information. So if you were looking for that straight laced, button down, prim and proper news program or talk show, this is not going to be it. This is potentially not safe for work. We're not totally bombastic with our F bombs, but they do get dropped like British cruise missiles. We'll explain in a little bit.
Or ATACMS.
Or TACMs, or it's stuff that you already know that you want to hear more about. So we'll talk about them, but then we'll talk about some other stuff that you never knew that you needed to know. So that's what we do here. We are live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to please like and follow this show. If you are watching us on YouTube, it's as easy as if you're watching, please just hit the subscribe button. It does not cost you anything. It does help us though. So that way the algorithms recognize us and more people can find us simply by you clicking subscribe on YouTube. And if you are on Rumble, hit that follow button, the thumbs up, the like, and all of that. And if you are in the position to do so, please become a $5 a month monthly subscriber if you find value in what we do so we can keep on doing this show for you every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Today, we are revolving the show. I think primarily, I think it's safe to say the dramatic escalation in the Russo-Ukrainian war as the U.S. Embassy in Kiev braces for a possible air attack into Kiev. We'll explain all of that and why. And, with this countdown of Biden getting out of office, I don't even know if he knows what the kids are doing. And by the kids, I mean Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. They are just ruling the roost while Papa is out of town in Latin America, like missing photo ops and stuff and, not knowing where to go to
Wandering
shake hands.
off.
Just wandering off into the Amazon or something.
I wish.
This is true story. No, it's not even him though. At this point, I almost wish Grandpa found his way back
Because
to the White House.
Grandpa would not be into any of this.
I think so. I think this is all Blinken and Sullivan.
I agree.
I really, really
well,
do.
we know this was not Biden has been pressured to escalate this shit for a long time, and he hasn't wanted to. He's resisted it, but he's increasingly feeble. I wouldn't be surprised if he was dead by the end of next year. He's on the way out. He's circling the drain.
And, I shouldn't say but I just feel bad for any old person. It's like I said,
if they're a genocidal maniac, I don't feel that sorry.
Know. Yeah. I know. I just always feel bad to just hearing anybody dying. And even if you're a gross warmonger, I just have a soft spot for old people. And so if you're hobbling around and you've got white hair and lots of wrinkles, even if you have faceless.
Listen up. We know Adolf got away from the bunker back in 1945. Manila says it's safe to come home. All is forgiven. You're old. You're old.
Oh, you're old. You managed to make it this long.
Little Addie.
Like I don't know if forgive is the right term, Ted, but I just end up feeling bad for anyone that's old. And Biden is.
As I get old, I'll take that.
Yes, you and me both. All right, let's hit the jaws and get into the headlines.
Quick breaking news before we get to the main story. Linda McMahon, the former WWE lady, has been named, wait for it, Secretary of Education.
Yeah! Body slam those kids.
Idiocracy is a real thing. Okay, let's move on to the real news here. President Biden has approved the provision of anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine as momentum builds in international support for Kyiv. Ukraine has committed to not using the mines in densely populated areas. That's nice of them, an unnamed official told the Washington Post. Never mind that these mines are completely illegal under international law. It comes as after Ukraine yesterday used American-made and American-operated long-range ATACMS ballistic missiles inside Russian territory for the first time, something that Biden had prohibited for the first 2 years of the conflict, in what Moscow described as an escalation of the conflict. Biden has ramped up support for Kyiv before President-elect Donald Trump, who's expected to take a softer stance to Russia and push for peace negotiations. God, what an asshole! Re-enters the White House. What kind of maniac would want to do that?
A monster.
I mean, I hate to say this. I've never voted for a Republican. I've never voted for Donald Trump, but I actually will feel safer under Donald Trump than I do currently under Joe Biden. And as someone who grew up as a Democrat and has primarily voted for Democrats in my entire life, that just honestly, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. Ukraine's forces struck an arms depot 110 kilometers deep inside the country on the 1,000th day of war. Moscow said that it would respond accordingly. Hours afterwards, Vladimir Putin signed a new nuke doctrine, lowering the threshold under which Russia can deploy atomic weapons to respond to attacks on its territory, warning Washington to cut the shit. A major aerial attack using conventional weapons is now grounds for the use of nuclear weapons, according to the doctrine announced in September and signed this week. I guess what constitutes minor and what constitutes major is a subjective question for the Russians to figure out. Meanwhile, the U.S. has temporarily closed its embassy in Kyiv today after receiving warning of a potential significant air attack, advising American citizens to be prepared to move immediately to shelter in place in the event of an air raid warning. Such warnings are rare and likely to be based on specific intelligence. And, that intelligence has been more impressive lately. Remember, there was that attack against the Russian concert that the U.S. warned Russia about. That came
music hall.
And that did turn out to be true. This comes amid reports that the U.S. had approved the provision of anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine, of course, a further step after the long-range missiles. The embassy says that the alert applied to all of Ukraine and advised people to monitor the media. It added the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv has received specific information of a potential significant air attack on November 20th. That's today. Out of an abundance of caution, the embassy will be closed, and embassy personnel, our employees, are being instructed to shelter in place. The U.S. Embassy recommends U.S. citizens be prepared to immediately shelter in the event an air alert is announced. How do you think, Manila, that the U.S. would respond if the Russians were to attack the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv?
Well, I mean, as we were talking off camera, and any embassy in any country, right? Any embassy, not only U.S., but any embassy anywhere is considered the sovereign territory. Even that littlest, tiniest plot of land, even if it's the tiniest little ramshackle house that's called the embassy, right? Which there are some of them here in Embassy Row that are tiny little homes. But that little 10,000 square foot plot of land is the sovereign territory of the country that's occupying that property at that moment. So if Russia were to respond, I can't say that I, blame them if they were to, accidentally detonate some stuff near the embassy. I get it, but that would be viewed as a direct attack on U.S. soil. So
by Russia.
And as you and I were saying, that it sucks that we as American citizens are sitting here hoping and praying for the mercy from Vladimir Putin because our government is so drunk on belligerence that they seem like in their last 60 days of office are determined to start World War III because they couldn't get it done in the past 1,000 days. So the last 60, why not? Let's go for it. Go back
I
and
mean,
go home.
the thing is, Biden's people are totally entitled to their opinion about what Trump's the new incoming president-elect's policy is going to be about anything. But frankly, it's pretty fucking rotten and unpatriotic to undermine the foreign policy, the well broadcast, well described, announced foreign policy of the incoming president-elect, who, let's face it, if the American people wanted to continue to support Ukraine the way that the Biden administration had been, they wouldn't have voted for Trump, right? I mean, it's not obviously a priority for the American people. So this is basically like, we don't care about what the voters have said. We don't care, about making sure there's a smooth transition of power, as Biden has promised. This is not a smooth transition of power. I mean, there's more to that than just turning over files and showing you how to use that like hinky bathroom key. Like, it's like, there's like this is part of it, and this is a major thing. It's wrong. I mean, and it's truly terrifying. I mean, so now what we have to do, as we were talking about before the show, we are in the uncomfortable position of knowing that the White House is basically staffed by idiots and maniacs, and that we have to count on Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, who we've been told is an insane maniac. He's not, but we've been told that. But we have to count on a foreign leader from an adversary nation to be the adult in the room and to show some restraint. And this, by the way, the situation with the embassy, theoretically, I mean, I don't know if anything's going to happen. It's already mid-afternoon out there in Ukraine. But what do you think? I mean, this reminds me a little bit of when Bill Clinton bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade during the Kosovo conflict. And there were mixed messages about whether that was an accident or not. The Chinese were extremely skeptical. But my understanding of that story was that Clinton got on the phone with the then president of China and basically said, please do not retaliate. Please do not view this as an act of war. I'll owe you one. You have a marker. Like, next time you need something from the United States, you'll have it. Just please.
I know 3 of your
cool.
citizens died, but bro, I owe you. I swear. I owe you. Like,
they do that. That's a lot of the time. They make these calls like, I owe you one, dude. So, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, I don't imagine, Joe. I really do not imagine anything like that's possible here, because the relations between the U.S. and China were not as bad as the relation. Yeah, the neocons. There's no one at the table. The problem is that with any American president, and I'm going to say this is true about Trump too, there's never anyone at the table who is anti-war as a reflexive thing. There's no pacifists are at the table. There's really never anyone who says, hey, let's go the diplomatic route and see what we can do here. The irony is that in recent decades with the neocons in charge, it's actually been the Pentagon who's kind of tried to put the brakes on militarism, and they'll literally say, like, what you're asking for is kind of hard, and it could be risky, and we could lose some people and some equipment.
Right.
And then it's
the State
Department is pushing for belligerence.
Being like,
it's totally ass backwards.
It's like when you think of it in that context, Ted, where the Pentagon, you think of the Pentagon brass as these like big burly men, that are war hardened and also academics at the same time, right? That these are like manly men. Maybe not nowadays, and that's a whole different conversation, having the DEI and woke stuff in the military, but generally
wait till our first trans general.
I know, not transgender, transgeneral. But
that's the name of that'll be the name of the new Netflix limited 8-part series.
Transgeneral. Well, generally speaking, the world thinks of the Pentagon, and they think, these burly men, that are just can't wait to, fire off weapons and hit that button to send some cruise missiles somewhere, some tomahawks somewhere. And then you think of the State Department as these pencil neck nerds that want, let's go have some peace talks, and let's, that's what you think. But it's like the roles are reversed, and while they are these pencil neck geeks, right, at the State Department. I mean, just look at Tony Blinken thinking he's some cool rock star playing his bass guitar at some bar in Ukraine, or ultra nerd Jake Sullivan with the punchiest face ever. These are the guys that were picked on in school, clearly, and now have some element of power under their wing, and they want to use it.
And by the way, and in the perverse language of the neocons, that's considered like realism and maturity, to understand that the world is a dangerous place. And I guess the US has to be the most dangerous part of it. And I mean, and that's the real world. That's realism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very stupid. Boy. All right, well, we're going to be getting into this with Mark Sloboda in a little bit, and we'll get you all the latest and find out what Mark is thinking from there on the ground over in Russia. So we will keep you posted on that. Let's continue with the headlines. All right. In his first and presumably last visit to South America as president, Joe Biden found himself in China's shadow. He met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Lima, the Peruvian capital, not like the town in Ohio, where I'm from, where it's called Lima, inexplicably, where they held frank discussions on the tough state of U.S.-China relations and cautiously looked toward Trump's ascension. Xi cut a larger figure than Biden in Peru and Brazil, where the Chinese leader received red carpet welcomes as a state guest. The pomp befitted China's rapidly expanding trade and investment footprint in the region. Biden, meanwhile, didn't give any interviews to journalists during his trip, which drew to a close yesterday. The most consequential move he made while abroad, his decision to authorize Ukraine to use those ATACMS to strike into Russia, had nothing to do with the Southern Hemisphere. In briefings with reporters, Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, kept the focus on how Biden will reinforce America's leading role in the Asia-Pacific. First of all, why would America have the leading role in the Asia-Pacific? I think China probably should have the leading role in the Asia-Pacific, and suggested Biden's foreign policy legacy is substantially defined by his administration's defense of Ukraine. And bam, right there is exactly what this is all about. The administration is telling Joe, you don't want to be remembered as the guy who lost Ukraine. You know, you've already invested so much. We have to double, triple, quadruple down now. Otherwise, you know, I mean, of course it's lost. It was lost from the beginning. It was never going to win. Reuters has a lead piece today, exclusive, where they're already basically saying that inside Washington in the corridors of power, it's well established that Ukraine has lost, and that they're going to have to sit down for peace talks. And they're talking about the broad contours of what that peace agreement with Russia will look like. And basically, it's everything that Russia has wanted for the last 2.5 years. Sure. And all these people on both sides have died for absolutely no fucking reason whatsoever.
I mean, what more can I say about that? This meeting in Peru is, I think, definitely less to do with the US-China relations and definitely more to do with the state of peace in the world as the outgoing administration. She is like, dude, I don't know about you, but I won my re-election, so I'm here for another 5 years.
Well, no way. He was not going to win that re-election.
No. And he's like, I'm in power. You're not going to be in about 60 days. So let's talk. And it's not Joe Biden. He's talking to Tony Blinken right there, who's really kind of the shadow president at this point.
That's true.
And John Kerry is still, I thought he retired out of all of this, but I mean, they still drag him around because, I don't know, he has some leeway with all these people for some reason, because maybe he gives them all free ketchup from his wife, you know, like, we will, if you make peace, if you let us do what we want, we'll send you pickles, relish, ketchup.
I love me some pickles.
Lifetime supply.
Love me some pickles. Ketchup I don't need ever. I'm a mustard man all the way. Not to mention, ketchup is like got all that high fructose corn syrup. It's probably going to be banned under RFK.
No, he's going to give them the European version of the Heinz stuff. Because it doesn't.
Oh, it tastes different. It tastes so different. Like here, it tastes like sugar. It's like red sugar paste.
It's red 40 and
yeah,
all,
like
it's
in Europe, it tastes like tomato. It's
like
very tomatoey. Yeah.
yeah. But
Imagine.
that's why I don't get why he's still there, other than to be like, my wife is super rich and let me
And
throw some
charming.
things at you.
And really charming. She's great. All right,
Teresa?
oh God, she's fantastic. She came and spoke at the AAEC, the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists convention in Pittsburgh, where she was from, right, where Heinz is from, and she was just fantastic. She glad-handed all of us, hung out at the cocktail party, kept up drinking with us all night long, and we were all like, oh my God, we were all smitten. We're like, we want him to be president just so we get to see her every day. I mean, she's fantastic. Who
knew?
If she were first woman president, I mean, if she'd run for president, she would have won 60% of the vote. She's fantastic.
Really?
Oh, she's smart, charming, funny. She's great. Anyway.
Wow.
He's really Mrs. Heinz.
Yeah, that's true.
He's Mr. Heinz. He's Mrs.
Yeah,
Heinz.
Mr. Heinz.
He's Mr. Heinz. Yeah, that's kind of like John McCain, right? He kind of like was kind of like a kept boy by his much wealthier wife, right? She had all the money, you know. She was after him for his looks. Anyway.
Oh God. Oh, no.
Germany's defense minister said the cutting of 2 undersea internet cables appeared to be deliberate acts of sabotage. The incidents
That's weird.
How could that happen? In the North Sea, when do underwater tubes ever have problems? I just never heard of anything like that before. The incidents are
I think it's drunk, some drunk Ukrainians.
Well, you got to look out for those guys on their pleasure craft. The incidents are a very clear sign that something is going on here. God, that's such a great line. So something is going on here. Really? Like you went to college? Boris Pistorius took reporters in Brussels ahead of a meeting of EU defense ministers yesterday. Nobody believes that these cables were accidentally severed. Maybe there's a very pointy, like a sawfish, that happened to go by. An underwater communications cable connecting Finland and Germany was cut Monday morning, its operator Sinia said, a day after damage was reported to a separate internet cable linking Lithuania and Sweden, also in the Baltic Sea. We have to state, without knowing exactly who it came from, that this is a hybrid action, Pistorius said, referring to the combined use of conventional military combat with other means of warfare, like clandestine operations or cyber attacks, in order to target adversaries. We also have to assume that it is sabotage, Pistorius added. Finnish and German foreign ministers said, I mean, the irony is rich, said in a joint statement Monday that they were deeply concerned about the severed undersea cable. They said, the fact that such an incident immediately raises suspicions of unintentional damage speaks volumes about the volatility of our times. Man, it's like, what, did Kamala Harris write this? It's just like a lot of words that say absolutely nothing. An investigation is underway, they said. Neither official laid blame for the severed cable. However, they said our European security is not only under threat from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, but also from hybrid warfare by malicious actors. We will not say who we're thinking about. Russia. European countries have enhanced protection of critical infrastructure as they confront a rise in sabotage attacks linked to Russia, which they say seeks to stir unease and increase the cost of Western support for Ukraine. I will go out on a limb and say that just maybe Russia had something to do with this, and I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean,
what evidence do you have, Ted?
I have no evidence whatsoever, except for the timing, which followed Russia did say that they would retaliate for the use of the ATACMS, and that retaliation could assume any number of forms, including conventional and non-conventional attacks against the U.S. and its allies. Allies are the key word here. So I think the timing, and also the fact that it's like tit for tat, right? Like you guys blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And you covered up for the Ukrainians doing it. So since that's apparently okay, maybe,
I'm gonna
but I have no evidence.
The other way.
I do. And this could, and honestly, there was an incident of a ship accidentally dragging an anchor over an optical cable and fucking it up too.
Yes.
So that has happened. It could be something just like that.
There are accidental things that actually do happen, but I'm going to swing in the opposite direction and play really play devil's advocate here and say, what if it's another false flag?
It could be.
It could be a false
It
flag.
could be.
So they can be like, look at these damn Russian divers. Like, look what they did. They're attacking our internet infrastructure and blowing up our internet. And I mean, what are the Germans supposed to do without the Finnish porn or whatever is traveling back and forth between them? But it could be a false flag because, I mean, as we have learned by way of Cy Hirsch, it is not very easy to get to the bottom of the Baltic Sea.
It is
right.
not.
It is not easy to get into that part of the ocean.
It is fucking dark. It is cold. It is deep. And these Nord Stream is even better, was even better protected. But, you know, even an optical cable like this, obviously it's also, you know, it's a sturdy material. And so it has to be deliberate for the most part. I mean, yeah, that anchor incident notwithstanding, look, it is possible to determine, you know, what ships were in the area, right? Cy Hirsch discovered that there was, there was a U.S. Navy vessel in the region of the Nord Stream at the time of the Nord Stream attack. I mean, you know, they do know, you know, what vessels, including submarines, are going through there.
Of course.
All the Scandinavian countries maintain sonar, control of these passages, so they know. Even though these are international waters. Yeah, it's very cool, right? So, I mean, I will say, to paraphrase some really notorious U.S. CIA, statements.
That's how they lay the cable, Ted.
It's so
I
cool.
Never knew. I've never seen, and so this is the first time I'm seeing
how they cool. But I think that
the internet happens. But
I would say that basically they're. I mean, I guess it's all going to be Starlink in the future, maybe, but.
Maybe, I don't know.
But this is an older version. It's like sort of picked up where the fiber optic cable that like started transcontinental phone calls, right? Like from a long time ago.
Look how much effort it takes to get the cable laid because it's so far down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big deal. It is not like some drunk dudes going down there.
It's a state actor, and like, look, the timing. I mean, it's definitely does have the hallmarks of like the Russians like basically swatting them across the nose, right? They didn't cut off their internet completely. They just sort of like, it's a warning. It's like a shot across the bow. It's like, quit fucking with us. Right.
Like, look what we can do. This is just a little thing. If they indeed did it. And again,
if they did it, which we don't know.
I just want to,
if I had to guess, I'd say probably.
I'm going to poke the Russian bear and just say, maybe this could be a false flag, because from my understanding, the Europeans they insist on escalation in Ukraine. So this, another thing to say, look what the Ruskies did to us.
Right.
They took away your porn.
That's possible too. That is totally possible.
They totally took away your porn.
All right, let's keep going here. We got more. The Philippines have been hit by 4 typhoons over 10 days. This is the most active November on record after a slow start to the 2024 Pacific typhoon season that's now in hyperdrive. Despite a relentless parade of storms in recent weeks, the western northern Pacific has actually been running more than 25% below average in terms of activity. That's based on something called ACE, or Accumulated Cyclone Energy, which might be the worst band name or BMX team name of all time. A metric which approximates how much energy storms churn through and expend on their strong winds. Why the active streak? Well, water temperatures have been running a few degrees above normal, allowing peak season to linger longer, and a high pressure system.
And killing coral.
That too. Yeah, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is really fucked right now. And a high pressure system has been somewhat stagnant from north of the Philippines to near the central Pacific Ocean. That has acted as a force field working against recurvature out to sea. Instead, that's a great word, recurvature. I can't imagine I'll ever need it again before I drop into my grave, but I love that word. Instead of steering storms westward into the beleaguered nation. But one odd factor is that overall there's a decent amount of sinking air present across the western Pacific. That would ordinarily reduce the odds of so many storms. However, the storms persisted. However, a convectively coupled Kelvin wave, or broad batch of rising air, has been present to the west of the Philippines and has now been moving east. That may have helped to enhance storms a bit upon their final approach to the nation. Regardless, the bout of extreme activity will undoubtedly be studied by scientists in the coming years. I actually would doubt that, because I think the weather's going to continue to become more and more extreme, and there's not going to be that much need to go back and look at the stuff that's less extreme, because it's just going to get worse and worse.
So, I feel like because people don't often cover or have a look in third world countries such as, like much of the Philippines or the Asian islands, this has been happening a lot more and more and more. And I would say at least in the past, for obvious reasons, by looking at me, I have some interest in what happens in Asia. And
no, why? I don't understand why. I don't get it.
I'm racist.
Oh.
So I feel like this has kind of been where we've been at for the last 20 years.
I'm going to ask the question, 15, Manila, are you named after the city in the Philippines?
I am. I am named after the capital.
Or is the city named after you?
Ooh, well, that would suggest I'm much older than I am, which is very possible because I am Asian, and you can never tell how old I
you could be 200 years old. Who knows? I
could be this 200-year-old sage, and you just have no idea. Or that could be that. I'm sure there's some ex-boyfriends that would call me that. But, that's another conversation. But look, the last 15 years, this has been happening all across much of Southeast Asia and the Asian islands, and nobody pays them any attention. What I'm curious to know about is, especially with Biden's supposed pivot to the Pacific, or even going back to Obama, their pivot to the Pacific, the Philippines right now is very key. And with Bongbong Marcos in office right now as the president, he plays a key role in the U.S. desire for containment of China, right? We're expanding 200 more bases and facilities in the Philippines. So when some shit like this happens to them, why is the U.S. not helping them? Why are they not helping these people that are already living in dire straits?
What does the U.S. owe the Philippines except having completely ravaged it as a colony for 70 years and legalizing torture and perfecting waterboarding against the Filipino insurgency? What did the U.S. ever do to the Philippines except fuck it up 6 ways till Sunday?
And
install years of brutal dictatorships leading to Bongbong.
Yes, and here is Bongbong, and
the son of Ferdinand, of course.
More importantly, Imelda.
Not the nicest man. No.
More importantly, Imelda's son, because she had all the great shoes.
That's true. Famously. Hey, so before I turn over the headlines to you, Manila, I want to remind everyone to please send in your question for the Ted Manila information show. So on Friday, we are going there. There's the on the screen. There's tmishowquestion@yahoo.com is the email address. What we want you to do is just record. You can just do this on your phone. Just record an audio clip. Just at the bottom, you can, and just very, very simple to do that. Just ask your question, and then send it as a file attachment, and then we will play it on the air and we will answer it. You might want to say who you are. You don't have to. You could just. Or you could use a fake name, or like Bongbong.
Look, I would even.
Bongbong. Hello, this is Bongbong from Manila. And Bongbong, if you're listening, we'll take your question.
By all means, Bongbong, if you are listening, I am named after your capital city. Granted, I am not Filipina. I'm still named after your capital.
Why did your parents name you Manila?
My dad was actually a big fan of boxing, and
the Thrilla in Manila.
He remembered listening to the fight on radio, and he heard Thrilla in Manila, and the name stuck. And
That's just thought, awesome.
So, but however, that was the second choice name. He actually wanted to name me
Rumble in the Jungle.
Wait for it. No, we've talked about this. Like I have South African friends who are named like Doctor and Inspector, and because it's
Infector.
No, inspector.
Oh, I like
The
infector.
inspector. No, not inspector.
I mean, it'd be
but
so
there are,
hard to
you know,
date if your name was Infector. Hello,
well,
my name is Infector. Infector.
I do have a friend that dated a girl briefly, and it didn't work out, but her name was oh God, it was Veneria.
Oh God, no.
Hmm.
Was she? I gotta ask. Was she hot?
She was very attractive.
I mean,
She was
she'd have to
Latina.
be. She'd have
She
to
was
be.
a curvy Latina, tall, curvy Latina in Los Angeles,
Might be
and
worth it.
but her name
Like,
was
what kind of
Veneria.
veneria are we talking about here?
I
Is it treatable with
personally
antibiotics, or is it one of
couldn't get
those
past
like
that.
gift that keeps on giving kind of situations?
And I was very grateful to be called Manila after
Oh
after
yeah,
I
no, for
yeah.
sure.
So I was like,
Did the name bug
oh
you? I mean, did any like were you teased as a kid, like stupid rhymes or whatever?
yeah,
People made fun of
in
me.
the
They're like,
80s.
Ted is dead in bed at the
Oh
Fed.
my,
I was like,
well,
God,
that's yeah, I know.
that's so
I got
stupid.
Manila Ice Baby because it was the 80s, right? Vanilla Ice, Manila Ice,
Could be
Vanilla
worse.
Ice Baby. Then they got even more racist and took it to Manila Rice Baby,
Yeah,
which is very clever.
little
Touche.
little less charming.
But touche. Adult Manila looks back and says, "That's really clever." And Manili Vanilli. But I'm also not Bong Bong, and I'm not Veneria. So
Right? No. It's or
no
as we talked about Rotunda the other
at
day.
Rotunda. So so if you are too shy to actually send a video, please just email a question.
Well, it doesn't have to be a video. It could be an audio.
Or an audio. Okay, yeah, there you go. An audio. You don't have to show your face, but
Or
we'll make you a part of the show.
Yeah. So yeah, or you could like be blacked out, like blurred out, like those old 60 Minutes things, like, "Hello, I'm a whistleblower for RJR Nabisco." Yeah.
Yes, but we will be happy to give you solicited advice. I mean, we give you unsolicited advice too. But
No, we're going to give you all the advices. We'll give you everything except veneria.
I feel really bad because there is a chance, because my friend stayed in contact with Veneria many years later, even though he's married, happily married and all this stuff, and they're friendly, and I was like, good God, you're still friends with her? And I went, oh yeah, because the name. And this is coming from a Manila, so I'm just gonna say.
Wait,
but no,
I don't get it. What do you mean? What about the name and being friends all that time? Sorry, I don't get it.
Because it's been like 20 years and life has moved on, and I'm like, oh, that girl with that weird name, and it's a name that
you would shit can a friend because they had a shitty name?
I wouldn't be able to say the name. Not that one. Like,
come on, be like, V girl, what's up? Venny.
Maybe.
Iria?
I don't know.
Rhea?
That's a tough one. That's a tough
Venny.
one.
Yeah.
I just think bad.
She might have a middle name.
Things. Yeah, but she doesn't go by that. That's why I'm saying. So when I found out not long ago that my friend was still friends with her, and I went, oh my God, I haven't heard that name in like 20 years, like since our 20s. And
I gotta say, like if it's like, if she ever has if Veneria ever has like any relationship problems and she goes to her psychologist and says, I'm not really sure if my husband loves me or my boyfriend loves me, or I'm assuming she's heterosexual. She may not be.
She is.
But okay, so she, I'd imagine the shrink would be like, your name's Veneria. He loves you. He wouldn't be there. He has every,
See what I mean? It's genuine, right? And so she's a nice woman. I've met her a couple of times, and I hate making fun of her name, but it's the honest truth about how I feel.
Well, it could have been chlamydia.
Yeah, but thankfully I was named after the Thrilla in Manila and not any of those things. And
you could have been named Thrilla.
Look, my dad's first choice was actually Juanita Louise.
Huh. No, well, I think you're better off with Manila.
I think so too. My mom.
I always wanted to be. I'm kind of sad that my mom never named me anything like cool, like Thor, like Thor Raw. I mean, there are guys named Thor.
I know, but I just.
Why can't I be named Thor? I mean, my voice would be deeper if I were named Thor. I'd be built.
That's a different
That's how it works.
conversation about how
Hello,
names,
I
and there
am
are studies
Thor.
about this.
I am
There are
Thor.
studies about this. There are studies about this, Ted, about the name shaping the kid.
Yes. Yeah.
So
No, you think I would
you know.
sound and look like this if I were named Spike? No, not at all. Or
So,
or Venerius.
Venerius. It's like the Roman conqueror Venerius. He goes
Yeah.
around spreading disease everywhere.
Well, they did do that a lot, actually. Or like,
God.
or like, you know, there's a god for everything. You know, like
no.
pray to the god Venerius, and your bumps
Greek.
your bumps will be alleviated. You'll no longer be the French tickler.
The Greek god Venerius. Okay, where is this going on a Wednesday? Oh my God.
All right, it's going to be a long week. Well, we're probably all going to be blasted away.
Right.
On the we're both going to vanish by ICBM during this broadcast, so we might as well have a good time. All right,
Okay.
we've got one last story. This one is yours.
I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one because this is a name that for Asian people, we loved Betty White because it is like a quintessential classic American name. And especially as the immigrant class, like from, like my family in the 70s, right? And into the 80s, there were so many Asian girls named Betty. I don't know if you know this, Ted. There are so many Asian girls who are like firstborn Americans. Their parents named them Betty. And it was after this icon,
really,
Betty White. Betty White, because Betty White was huge in the 80s from obviously the Golden Girls. So, and Asian parents try to pick in that era, they tried to pick the most American apple pie sounding names. So Betty was among them. That's why you have so many Asian girls.
It's a very 50s,
right?
40s.
But that's why you have so many Asian American women who are, I would say, that are my age now, like middle age now, that are named like Betty and Susie and Sally, Susan, or whatever variation. But it's like these classic American names, apple pie American names, and Betty White was one of them. And God bless her, the USPS finally gave this American icon her own stamp. So the USPS might have found a way to unite a nation bitterly divided after this month's election. It released a Betty White stamp. The beloved actor, known for roles in The Golden Girls, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Boston Legal, and many others, will be emblazoned on the 2025 Forever stamp, as USPS announced last week. Betty White died, of course, in late December of 2021, less than 3 weeks before her 100th birthday.
There she is with Mary Tyler Moore.
Oh, the Postal Service hasn't announced the release date.
She was Phyllis, right? Or something like that? What's her name on the Mary Tyler Moore?
Show? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think she was Phyllis. Mm-hmm.
Was it? I don't know. And of course, the quote here is an icon of American television, Betty White, 1922 to 2021. Shared her wit and warmth with viewers for 7 decades, says the Postal Service.
She was the happy homemaker.
Stamp. She was so cute. And it depicts a smiling Betty White, as you can see here. Ted doesn't like the art or the font.
The font in particular is disastrous. And the art sucks because, I mean, they paid a graphic designer for this, which I guess is a step up for the Postal Service these days. But she's wearing a purple dress with small white polka dots, and it's so dumb. There's a purple background, which I guess is okay, although it kind of implies LGBT stuff. But anyway, and then there's like these champagne bubbles behind, like I guess kind of echoing the dots from the dress. And
so what you're saying is they didn't do her justice.
The picture's okay. I think there's, frankly, I would have gone with a high Betty White period. This is kind of like old Elvis versus young Elvis.
Oh,
and
really?
I think this is old Elvis. And I think young Elvis, I would have gone middle-aged Elvis on her. The Mary Tyler Moore period is high Betty White.
No. Because Betty White was old it seemed like forever. She looked old forever.
No, she didn't. In the 70s, on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, she had like white hair, but that was trust me on this. I'm older than you.
She
I was
had it,
there in the 70s.
she
That
had
was
a
not
tipping point.
unusual. People like women who were 40 looked like that. And like, so that was
That's
a
what I'm
normal
saying.
look.
She
She
looked
played the
old
neighbor. She
forever.
could have been like my neighbor in Ohio. And
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh.
I
But
just
she's
think
so
they should.
cute.
I mean, she was always a very attractive woman. Even when
She's
she was
a
much
really
older.
cute lady. So
Yeah.
that is the fun, happy story of the day before we get into doom and destruction with our favorite doomster who's here. I see him already. So let's move on from that. Going from happy Betty. Betty made everybody happy.
Shall I bring him in?
I think the whole world can agree with that, Ted. Everybody loved Betty White. There's nobody that had anything bad to say about Betty White.
I bet Zelensky didn't like Betty White.
He is a horrible human being if that was the case. We don't know. But all right. So with that, let's move on to our last topic of the day and get more in depth.
All right.
Do
you want to bring him in, or do you want me to bring him in?
You go ahead and do it. I'm going to hit some buttons here.
Okay, you hit some buttons. All right. Donald Trump's election victory caused a lot of people to think that the war between Russia and Ukraine would still come to an end as the United States pulled back on its financial and military support for Ukraine, something that former President Trump promised repeatedly throughout the campaign. However, what was expected to be a quiet transition in America's proxy war has heated up dramatically after President Biden reversed himself in order to allow Ukraine to fire US-made and US-operated ATACMS missiles up to 200 miles into the Russian Federation, which they've now done. As Russian President Vladimir Putin had threatened to do, Russia quickly responded by updating its nuclear doctrine in order to authorize Russian military leaders to launch a nuclear strike against any nuclear-armed country that attacks Russia, whether it uses nuclear or conventional weapons. Now that has occurred. Ukraine used an ATACMS to attack Russia. And of course, there's also this landmine thing. And of course, there's this possible threat against the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Will Russia let it go, retaliate asymmetrically, or go to DEFCON 4, or whatever the equivalent is where they have in Russia? Can Putin wait things out until January 20th when Trump comes into office? And if he does, will it pay off with a long-term settlement? How close are we to World War III? We are joined by Mark Sloboda. He's a military and international relations and security analyst and an expert on the war between Russia and Ukraine to game out what comes next. You can follow Mark on Twitter at MarkSloboda1, on his YouTube channel at The Real Politic with Mark Sloboda, and find him on Facebook at facebook.com/Gramsci. That's GRAMSCI. Mark, thanks for joining us here on the TMI show.
Ted, Manila, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show. And Ted, I'm going to leave the assertion that Betty White was attractive in your corner. There. And her character's name on Golden Girls was Rose.
I was talking about the Mary Tyler Moore show, though.
Oh,
she was Phyllis.
Way back.
Okay. Mary Tyler Moore show is at least, I don't know. It's. I feel old at 50, but you're obviously.
I'm 61.
Taking it way back.
Yeah, different, a decade older, a different generation.
Yeah.
Taking it way back. But I think most of the younger generation, by the way, they're seeing a resurgence in viewership in the Golden Girls. Just so you know, it's a thing. Like on Netflix.
They should watch Mary Tyler Moore show instead. It's a better show.
I don't even know what the Mary Tyler Moore show is.
Oh, it's absolutely iconic. I mean, Mary Tyler Moore plays a young local TV producer in Minneapolis. She's a single woman trying to make it in the big city, and this show launched a lot of careers. Notably, Ed Asner. He took off there, and what's his name? The guy who played the news anchor, Ted Baxter. What was that guy's name? With the white hair.
I can see his face. I can't think of the names. But yeah, it did launch a lot of careers. So there's that.
Oh, by the way, I've reassessed my best 80s cartoon, and I have to withdraw the Thundercats and put forward Thundar the Barbarian.
I don't know about Thundar.
I don't know, but absolutely incredible 80s sci-fi apocalyptic cartoon from the 80s.
Thundar. All right, I'm gonna check that out.
I don't know that one. I did love Land of the Lost.
Well, that's much older than the 80s.
Yeah, that I am aware, but it wasn't really a cartoon, though, was it?
No.
Yeah, are we doing only okay? I need to think of cartoons that I like. I don't know. Okay, but in not so cartoonish world, in reality world, here we are.
Pretty cartoonish. Still pretty cartoonish.
Well, you can still go. I mean, technically, The Simpsons is an 80s show, isn't it? Or not? No, no,
yes,
it's not.
Yeah, no.
With the Tracy, maybe with the Tracy Ullman stuff.
Tracy Ullman, it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, but anyhow, yeah. Well, The Simpsons they predict everything. I don't know if they predicted this one. I don't know. I'm not
about today.
An aficionado. Yeah, with they predicted a lot of stuff. With the whole Kamala Harris female president thing. I guess that was applicable to Hillary Clinton.
President Trump. They predicted that.
They predicted that. I don't know if anyone saw this Ukraine thing coming. You really? Well, here we are. He's that guy. I never thought, Mark, I would be praying I can't wait for Donald Trump to get into office after waking up this morning and finding out that Joe Biden, no idea. I mean, it can't be worse than this. The Biden administration not only greenlights ATACMS yesterday, but now the UK is sending, now the landmines, and now the UK is allowing usage of the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. So I feel like the West really, really, really extra wants to F things up before Trump gets into office and maybe get that World War III going. So that way Donald Trump is left with having to deal with cleaning up the crap. I kind of feel like that's part of it.
Okay, so let me while this is being portrayed in the West as Biden allows or greenlights Kiev's use of the ATACMS missiles deeper into Russia. First of all, these missiles have already been used on Russian targets for a year, right? Now, they've been used in the Donbass, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Crimea, and I know the West doesn't consider them to be part of Russia. Speaking as someone with a Crimean wife and family in the Crimea, I beg to differ. But there's an understanding of that. But let's be clear, because Putin was very specific a few months ago when this topic was last raised, and the White House backed away from it at the time. This is a U.S. ballistic missile that has to be guided to target by U.S. GPS active satellites, and the targeting sequence for firing actually has to be programmed into the individual missile by U.S. military specialists. Because like with the British Storm Shadows and the French Scalps, it uses a proprietary classified coding software that there's no way that the U.S. would transfer to the Kiev regime because of the potential leak and the compromising of an entire weapon system that way. And we know this because no less a person than the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, publicly said as much when defending his decision not to send German Taurus cruise missiles, because he wouldn't put German troops on the ground launching missiles at Russians, right? He specifically, like the British, the French, and the Americans are doing. He specifically said that. So Putin has been clear. This isn't a matter of giving permission to the Kiev regime to now launch missiles deep into Russia proper, if you will. This is Joe Biden firing ballistic missiles into Russia. That's the Russian perspective. Right. That's the way they see this. They see this as an act of war by the United States on the Russian Federation. Not a proxy, no fig leaf, an act of war by Joe Biden against Russia. Now, the question is, how will Russia respond? Previously, when the last time this possibility was pushed, CNN came out with a story saying that the U.S. talked Russia out of supplying long-range anti-ship missiles to the Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis, the Ansala movement, that has been conducting a blockade against Israeli and Israeli allied, meaning Western shipping, in the Red Sea now, over the ongoing Israeli genocide of Palestinians. They've conducted multiple attacks with cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drones on U.S. and Western warships in the Red Sea. And if Russia provided far more long-range, accurate, and powerful anti-ship missiles, you can pretty much guess they'd be in a hurry to use it. Now, supposedly, this was backed down, presumably because Biden at the time refrained from conducting these attacks in Russia. I think you can be pretty certain that Russia is definitely reconsidering going through with that, in which case it will be young U.S. sailors and Marines who pay the price for Biden's attacks on Russia. That said, Russia has to weigh the precedent and the deterrence here of the senile warmonger exiting the stage when Trump, with at least the potential that if not bringing an end to the conflict, will at least de-escalate the U.S. role in it in less than 2 months. So there's a lot for the Kremlin to consider here, a lot of precedent, issues of deterrence. What will the Trump administration do? Will they just continue this, or will they change policy? Will they revoke, these type of attacks? And what is done in the meantime? We've already seen 6 missiles launched, 6 of these ATACMS into Russia. Now, contrary to the New York Times story, which claimed they would just be used in a narrow range of territory in the Kursk region, supposedly to hit of Russia, where those invisible North Korean super soldiers that no one has found any evidence of, this Red Dawn fan fiction, that was the excuse. But they weren't used in the Kursk region at all. They were fired into the Bryansk region at an old Soviet ammunition depot that wasn't even being used in this conflict. And according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 5 of those missiles were shot down, a 6th was hit and crashed, causing a fire, but not actually hitting the base in question. So all of them failing to hit the target. And according to the Financial Times, the Kiev regime has no more than 50 of those. So at least that leaves us with no more than 44 for hitting nothing. And that is, is it something that Russia will factor in? These weapons have already been used against Russian targets for a year. And Russia has long developed a profile for their electronic warfare and air defense systems, the best in the world, by the way. And they have demonstrated the capability to physically bring these things down with air defense and to block their GPS signals with their electronic warfare, rendering them useless hunks of metal floating through the sky, unable to connect to their target. So this isn't some type of game changer. The Pentagon did not want to do this. They were against this because they said that this will not change anything on the battlefield. There's nothing that the Kiev regime can hit with as many as we can afford to give. And the Pentagon doesn't want to give any more of these missiles because they are not currently producing any more of them. And they're very, very worried about a potential conflict that the U.S. intends to provoke with China in the Taiwan Straits and the South China Sea in the very near future, because they are constantly harping about a missile gap, a conventional missile gap that they're afraid will give China an advantage. And I think we're already well past that point of the U.S. being able to win that conflict. But, I guess they still have hopes in that category, which is why Biden is having to pry these ATACMS out of the Pentagon's hands. And supposedly now they've got less than 50 left. For what? So you could stage a big explosion at an ammo depot that wasn't even an old ammo depot that wasn't even being used in this conflict, i.e. an info warfare hit that didn't even work. And that's why we are now now Putin's not going to fire nuclear missiles into Russia, right? That's
into Ukraine.
Or into Ukraine. Right, Russia's not going to fire nuclear missiles into the U.S. or into Ukraine, right? That's absurd. That's not what's going to happen.
So
what about this potential embassy attack?
Right, they keep saying air attack on high alert, whatever. The U.S. embassy is shut down immediately.
Yeah, I have to assume that's disinformation. Russia also is not going to attack an embassy. That is not in Russia's MO whatsoever. They've always been very against such measures. Russia will attack with a military response to a military attack if they choose to respond at all. And I'm not so sure they will, because while there is the question of red lines and deterrence, it's quite obvious that Joe Biden is laying a trap here, right? And I think Putin will weigh everything in and will reserve the right to conduct a response to this into the future, depending on what the Trump administration does or does not do once inaugurated. But I think Putin is a little too, not senile, compared to Biden, that he won't walk into. The trap is really for Trump, not for Putin. But
are there, speaking of which, are there back channel communications or even normal communications between President-elect Trump and President Putin, where basically Trump is saying, "Look, this isn't me. Hold tight. The cavalry's on the way. I'm sorry. Like my predecessors are being a little cray cray."
Yeah, according to the Russian side, there's been no contact whatsoever. But I would suggest that there is a way, if you have close Trump confidants like Donald Trump Jr. or Richard Grenville speaking, presenting, what we can assume, or we at least hope, is Trump's disapproval of this, right? Trump isn't leaping into it himself, which is the smart thing to do politically, right? But if his interlocutors are speaking out, Russia is, of course, listening. And we can presume that that's some type of indirect message to Russia, hopefully.
Do you foresee any chance of this warfare going into the water, as like maybe in the Black Sea somewhere? Do you see this escalation going that way at all?
See, the Black Sea is not actually very good territory for the U.S. because they are not a littoral state of the Black Sea. So they are restricted by the admission of warships into the Black Sea by the Montreux Convention that Turkey, as the state controlling the Dardanelles Straits, is bound by. So the U.S. could only send one warship into the Black Sea at a time, and they can't send any aircraft carriers. So the Black Sea is not a good area for such confrontation. But Russia does have a naval base in Syria now. They've got naval bases there. The U.S. has military and naval and air bases all over the Middle East. There's plenty of room in the Middle East for this conflict to expand into. We've already seen it expand into Africa.
Well, Mark, we got a viewer question for you. I'm going to throw at you from Adrian. Adrian asks, Does Mark really think there'll be a formal Russia-US negotiation? Also, can Russia take the chance to leave even a rump Ukraine state?
Okay, Adrian. So certainly there won't be any Biden Russia, right? That was never in the cards. Do I think there will be a Russia a US negotiations? No, I don't. I think Donald Trump will present his deal, which is basically an attempt to push the Kiev regime and Russia into an agreement that he brokers as if he was a third party, which as US president, he won't be. He will be a party to this conflict. But I don't think there will be any intention of direct negotiations between the US and Russia. I think that that's not in the cards. The US still has their pretense of not being a party to this conflict.
Oh, correction. Ukraine. I read that wrong.
Sorry, what about China? I mean, China's played a role in recent years as a broker in conflicts. Could President Xi offer himself as a credible third-party broker?
He has previously offered. He's presented his own Chinese peace deal, and Zelensky has had some very nasty and disrespectful things to say about him in China. So I don't think that's really an option. To be perfectly honest, I don't believe that the Zelensky regime in Kiev is even ideologically or emotionally, mentally capable of engaging in negotiations. I think with Russia, I think they will go down to the end. I think unless they are removed internally or, by U.S. connivance, I don't believe that his own people have told Simon Schuster of Time Magazine already last year that he is delusional, and you can't tell him that they're not doing well in this conflict.
But the U.S. would never interfere in the internal affairs of Ukraine and consider changing its president.
Yeah, sure.
Well, he's already not president, Mark. I think we forget. Technically,
That's
his
true.
term ended in May. So Zelensky is like, I don't know, little dictator in chief there until TBD.
As far as Russia is concerned,
Speaker of the
every
House.
leader of the Kiev regime since the 2014 U.S.-backed putsch is illegitimate, right?
Fair.
They have banned every political party representing the people of East Ukraine in the country, some 20 political parties. Every leftist party in the country has been banned, right? They've gone after the Russian language. They've gone after the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Mark, we lost your video for some reason. But we can hear you
there. But they haven't. I don't think that they're capable of conducting any negotiations.
So I guess that brings us to the other half of Adrian's question, right? Which is, if that's the case, if they decide that they're, like Nazi Germany, going down to the bunker, could Russia find itself in a position of having to press forward and go all the way to the border with Poland and either take over, overthrow the Zelensky government and install someone more amenable, or or occupy Ukraine? What happens then? Or do we just continue with years of grinding slog?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility, and a lot of it will depend, of course, on what Trump does or doesn't do. But I think that there is growing feeling within the Kremlin. We've heard it voiced from people like, Medvedev, who has become the new Zhirinovsky, the new hawk or blowhard, depending on your take. But we've also heard it from Lavrov and others that they believe that this only ends with regime change in Kiev. And I have to say that I agree with that as well. Now, there will be multiple crux points where both Russia and the West will have to reassess and consider whether it requires further escalation, i.e. NATO boots on the ground. When Russia fully liberates the Donbass sometime next summer, most likely, when Russia fully liberates Kherson and Zaporozhye as well, right? Perhaps a year after that, when Russia reaches the Dnieper, at each one of those points, there will be a push by neocons in both the US and in Europe, within the Trump administration and without it, that they need to defend Kiev, right? That will be the question. So, but the alternative is to leave a regime in Kiev that is ideologically, disposed towards total and eternal conflict with Russia along the lines of some kind of Banderite fascist West Ukrainian ultra-nationalists, identity, and face that being armed, even if at a lesser degree or a guerrilla war, by the West going forward into the future. At that point, rather than have it be a battle platform, it's probably to Russia's benefit to just occupy it, which will lead to a guerrilla war in its own accord. And I was against myself 3 years ago, but we're in a different place now than we were 3 years ago.
Mark, what about internal divisions within Ukraine? I mean, but Zelensky, there were opposition parties before he came along. Zelensky was really unpopular. His approval rating was in the teens before the conflict began. So, I mean, obviously there are people who are chafing at the bit within Ukraine who don't like Zelensky, many of whom probably want to, some of whom probably want to make peace with Russia. Is there any chance that there will be an uprising internally within Ukraine, either as a palace coup or as a revolution that would overthrow him?
Okay, so the only alternative for that is another figure within the Maidan regime, right? Mm-hmm. Whether we're talking the candy oligarch Poroshenko, who preceded Zelensky, or Zaluzhny, who himself is a raving Banderite fascist with 2 busts of Stepan Bandera in his room because one of them is not enough, right? I don't see where either of those would be an improvement on Zelensky. In fact, they would probably be worse. And there simply are no further political figures in Ukraine, right? All other political parties outside of the Maidan parties have been banned, right? Their leaders have been persecuted. They've been driven out of the country. They've been attempted to assassinate another opposition leader in Spain.
There's no underground. There's no Operation Valkyrie possible here.
There is a very light underground that is, for instance, burning the conscription cars at night in the Odessa area and elsewhere. But for all intents and purposes, what has happened in the last, since 2014, is that the security and military have been filled with Banderites, right? And Kirill Budanov, as the Kiev regime's military intelligence chief, is the perfect example of this. There is no indication that there would be anything else from these people. In fact, they've given every indication that if Zelensky dared actually go to negotiations, that they would kill him, right? And take control of the country themselves. So without any type of dissent from the security services, from the military, right, from these institutions of power, then there's really no possibility of any uprising. Because if anyone comes out to protest or stage an insurrection or move, they simply get packed off to the front. And that's been the pattern for months now.
It sounds like on Ukraine's side that no matter which way they cut it, whether it's with Zelensky or whoever, I mean, I don't know who else there would be, because as you outlined, there is no opposition to him. But it doesn't sound like there's any peace even being considered from the Ukrainian side, do you think there's actually any peace being considered on the Russian side, or does the peace not matter, that Vladimir Putin is dead set on the goals outlined by the special military operation? So it just, Washington be damned, doesn't matter who's here. They're just going to keep forging on.
Yeah, I don't think either one of them really is interested in any deal or any peace at all. Both sides, the Kiev regime and Russia, are fully still, without any degree of remove, committed to their maximalist goals, right? The Kiev regime getting all of their territory back, sending Russian leadership to war crimes trials, reparations, all of this Zelensky peace formula fantasy. On the Russian side, the goals of the SMO, which have been clearly laid out, but they're still quite a way from achieving all of them, which includes the demilitarization and the denazification or debanderization of Ukraine, as well as the full liberation of the Donbass, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. That's quite a ways away. The difference, of course, is that Russia is winning and has the ability to achieve their maximalist goals. And I don't think that there's any sentiment in Russia for anything less than a total victory at this point. They feel that they've sacrificed this much. The common sentiment is they want to remove this. They don't want to have to fight this war again in 4 years or 8 years or 10 years. Right. Both sides are saying no more Minsk, right? Both sides are saying that. And I don't think there's any U.S. dictated deal of Trump's that is going to change. Russia has been clear. There will be no freezing of this conflict. Right?
What will be the effect? What do you think is likely? What do you think Trump is actually likely to do vis-a-vis Ukraine? And what effect will that have?
Yeah, he'll present a deal that probably isn't too different from the deals, from the plans that have been put forward by Pompeo and others, right? Calling for a freeze of the conflict, perhaps calling on Kiev to accept, at least temporarily, Russian, occupation of some of the territory they claim as their own, and so forth, conditions that will be agreed on by neither side. And so when Putin says "niet" to Trump, right, you're the losing side of this conflict. You're not a third party. You're part of this conflict, and you're losing, and we're winning. Why should we agree to your terms? No. Then Trump is left with two options, right? First of all, Zelensky's also likely to say no, but let's leave that to the side for the moment. So Trump can either walk away, cut off all aid to Ukraine, and say, well, I did what I could. I guess Russia will just take it all. Right? I don't see that as a realistic possibility. I don't think that Trump can do that as the U.S. president. I don't think he has the power over the blob, over the foreign policy.
You don't think this time is different? I mean, these cabinet appointees tend to signal a far more confident, Donald Trump than the first time around.
There's an awful lot of neocons in that cabinet, and what they will be telling Trump is, Putin said no to you. How dare he? We need to project strength.
Right.
You're going to have to escalate to de-escalate.
Right. That's what they always say.
That is what they always say. I don't think Trump has the capability to do this. How many assassination attempts have there been on him so far?
But
he tries to go against.
There's also the counterfactual that he might be 78 years old, lame duck president, looking towards his legacy and giving no shits.
Yeah, we can hope, right?
That's the hope.
That's the hope, right? I've seen no reason to believe that from his previous administration, from the course of the U.S. so far,
or the picks in his administration.
If we want to hope, let's hope. But I don't do hope. I don't.
Well, he's in a different place. And he seems
Mark
to be
is the hope dasher.
I
though.
can't agree
I know
with
he's a
that.
hope
Mark
killer.
Rubio and Mike Waltz and Peter Hegseth does not tell me that Trump is in a different place. It does not.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but sadly, Mark, like I said at the top, I said that the alternative, the Biden side, the Biden party, whatever, if they want to call themselves Democrats or whatever, they seem to be worse. And I really, really hate them for making me root for Trump right now, because that's the only hope we have, because the evidence I do have from the Biden administration is escalation, escalation, escalation on your way out in the 11th hour. So
I can't argue with
hate
that.
them.
I just don't drink Coke or Pepsi.
All right, Mark, we lost your video a while ago. We see your logo up there. Tell us again where people can still find you if they can. If your YouTube channel is back, tell us.
No one
all
can
that
find
stuff.
me. Only you. No, you can find me at Mark Sloboda1 at Twitter X. You can also find me on Telegram and Substack at The Real Politic with Mark Sloboda.
That'll
All
do
right,
it.
Mark.
You're the best.
Let me de-introduce him. Well, we can't de-escalate, but we can de-introduce Mark Sloboda, the voice you just heard. But the face that you lost about 5 minutes ago is an international relations and security analyst. Follow Mark on Twitter, now called X, at Mark Sloboda1, on his YouTube channel at The Real Politique with Mark Sloboda, and get him on Facebook at facebook.com/Gramsci, GRAMSCI. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks you, Mark. All right, so there you go. I do feel a little better, believe it or not, even though Mark is the dream dasher or the hope dasher, in that he believes Vladimir Putin will, as we hoped, be the adult in the room and not take the bait, and not strike the U.S. embassy.
Nah, he's not going to. I can't say he's definitely not going to do the embassy, but it would be a terrifying move if he did.
I feel pretty confident that he's not. I feel like he's not going to do that. And hearing it from Mark, who has his finger on the pulse up there, I should say, in Moscow, I do feel a little more confident that that's not going to be what goes down next. Although, again, let me bring up the FF, the false flag. So if Putin doesn't do it, somebody might. A drunk Ukrainian sailor or something. I don't know. They just wandered off the shore.
They are legion, those drunk Ukrainian sailors.
They just wander off and blow things up, like that's just like, but nobody knows who they are. They just could happen. They might accidentally blow up the U.S. embassy in Kiev, and that would be a terrible thing. And because then miscommunication. Hey, Cuba, it almost happened in Cuba, under Kennedy, where the submarine almost fired off because they didn't know that something happened above water, and it was I feel like we're almost there.
Oh, there's been so many of those things. I mean, so many.
Okay. Well, there's that. I have the email questions to TMI show question@yahoo.com up there on the screen.
This is for advice. This is for Manila and I to answer your questions about anything, politics, news, personal advice. We really want to do some personal advice. I would trying to figure out whether you want to. I had a segment on my old show in LA, which is called Dial-A-Dump, and it was people would call up and they didn't have the courage to break up or get divorced from their significant other. So I would do it for them. I was their relationship assassin. It was true. It got so big that like before we went on the air, like literally we'd have full lines because people were all over the Southland. That's like the
opposite of Love Line that I used to listen to on K-Rock that made Dr. Drew. This is that's like your hate line. This is like the dump line. Like
it was the dump line. Very popular. And it got to the point where I would call people and identify myself. Hey, this is Ted Rall. You're live on KFI AM 640. And as soon as they heard that, they would start screaming.
Because they knew you were.
They knew they were about to be broken up with.
That their partner was too much of like this sissy little bitch to do the breakup.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
That they had Ted do it for them.
I did.
What an awful gimmicky. It's gimmicky, but it's awful. And
are you judging me?
Time. I can't believe you would take part in something like that,
It was
Ted.
my
That's
idea.
so. Oh my God.
It was brilliant. Look, honestly, I was offering people freedom from captivity. I was like a liberator of the masses. I came in. You're trapped in a bad relationship. You don't have the cojones.
That's what John McCain said. He's a liberator, and that's why he was going to Maidan. I'm just saying.
I was a liberator. I was welcomed. I was greeted as a liberator.
Oh my God. All right. Yeah. With that, we'll just leave that there. Ted, if you guys do that and ask Ted to do the breaking up, I'm going to make Ted do that. I'll do the consoling.
I'll do it. But we don't have the ability to call on the show. We don't have that technology.
Well, I mean, if somebody
could figure it out, probably.
We could figure it out. But if somebody did it, that would.
Yeah, we're not offering that service right now. Right now, it's like, let's say you want to know whether you should break up with someone. And you give us some details about the pros and cons of your relationship. We'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'll do that, but I don't want the part of the Ted part of
I was an even worse person than when I was younger. Even worse.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us.
As people in their 30s are.
God, Ted, this is terrible. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Putinbot Gaming, for your support and, of course, moderating the chat. Please go check out that gaming channel as well on YouTube and here on Rumble. And for all of you watching on YouTube, please make sure if you're watching and you haven't subscribed that you do so, because that will really help our channel grow. And, of course, we can become monetized soon. So then you won't, have to be put in the position of having to, us asking you to cop up some money like we're doing with the Rumble folks, asking them.
Although we'll get to you guys too, and we'll have some way to do that. But please,
eventually we'll get there.
Do the right thing and subscribe.
At least.
I mean, you're consuming the content. You like it. Hit subscribe to it.
So we ask, if you want us to keep doing this show, if you enjoy what you're seeing, you find value in this, then help us do that. Because, with the Biden sanctions, Ted and I have been out of work for the past month. So here we are. So we are fully independent and rely on subscribers to help us get past the holidays and make this show a real job. So, if we can do that, if you can help us by any way, sharing it or whatever, click on that button right now in the Rumble chat, hit subscribe, and of course the follow or whatever on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for being with us. As usual, we will see you guys back here. I don't even know, there's so much to talk about, Ted. We're never going to hit our 1 hour mark because I thought we're going to have
to hit our 1 hour mark.
There's usually a lull after elections, right?
That's true.
But this is not the case this year because we have a senile old man who's letting all the kids run amok, having a house party here in Washington, throwing bombs over there, bombs over here, just everything
is on the turntable.
Just batshit crazy the next 60 days. I honestly believe that. I think the next 60 days is going to be absolutely bonkers because the old man just don't give a fuck anymore. He's done. He's like, fuck this. I don't care about pictures. I don't care. I'm just showing up to things. I'm here for the food. When do I retire? He's done. And I think it's going to get extra bumpy because we know, as much as we don't like a lot of Biden's policies, Ted, that relative to everybody else in Washington, he has been a little bit more center and a little less nutty than we're seeing right now.
That's true.
I'm going to say Blinken and Sullivan. So
I
buckle up. All right. That's going to do it for us. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Hasta mañana, everybody. Adios, amigos. Thank you. Bye. I got to do the outro. Bye.